So I usually would never speak with paper, but I wanted to make sure that the details that was necessary in this presentation were not missed or misquoted. So let's talk about what we know about Martin Luther King. He was born January 15th, 1929. He married Coretta Scott, 1953, and together they had 4 children. We know that he was a Baptist preacher and a fierce civil rights activist. We know that he believed and encouraged the assimilation of different types of people. Being a black man in the Jim Crow South, he knew firsthand the stains and pains of slavery that were still being clinged to in the then current society. He had seen and experienced the degradation and the inhumane treatment of people of African heritage and descent that would now be known as Black and or African American people. But even living in times such as he did, when human beings were being reduced to the color of their skin and the superiority was down to the simplest and the mundane things such as whites only, Black, Negro, or colored only restrooms. But even while living through such times, he empathized and he acknowledged the frustrations of the Jewish people and the Asian people that suffered their own atrocities. Not negating one, but respecting and understanding each's journey. We cannot ask for others to understand our journeys when we do not have place in our heart to acknowledge theirs. Martin Luther King believed firmly in education, having graduated from Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, and then receiving his divinity from the Crozer Theological Seminary, and then lastly receiving his PhD from Boston University. He understood that ignorance, real true ignorance, was based on a lack of the fundamentals of education, and encouraged profusely the Negro to get educated, because education was the way in which they were going to be able to use their words, and words were in fact the true power.
Yes.
In 1964, Martin Luther King was the recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize for his staunch and vigorous fight against racial inequality through a nonviolent resistance. In 1965, he organized 2 of the Selma to Montgomery marches. Having the platform that he took and his selfless life of service, he extended his platform to poverty, capitalism, as well as the Vietnam War. On April 4th, 1968, unfortunately, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee. He would never live to see his dream become our reality. He would never live to see a room such as this is today, with a little bit of everyone from a little bit of everywhere. In 1977, Martin Luther King was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and in 2004, the Congressional Gold Medal. He knew not only were we a people under attack, but the very fiber of the democracies, the truths, the freedoms that we were promised merely as being human beings and existing in a world that we had not chosen, but yet a place that we called home. The promise of our forefathers, the Declaration of Independence, that we hold these truths self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Martin Luther King fought to desegregate the South, to prevent violations of our voter rights, our labor rights. And while going into verbal and foot battle, he still remained his stance on nonviolence. He believed that love was and is still the answer. He trusted our ability to be able to empathize with each other's circumstances. He fought against what is now often called systemic racism and racial inequities in everyday living. He knew that we were much better together as a people. When you only have the ability to support people that look like you become no better than the oppressors that have oppressed you. And even if it is with the good intent, alienation is alienation. It does not matter. In 1971, it was erected federally and state that Martin Luther King Jr. would be a national holiday. And many have erected this day as a day of service, and that's admirable. But I'm going to challenge each and every last one of you in this room here today to not take this day as a day of service, but a day of reflection, to reflect on the service. Let this be your 365th day of the year, with the start of day one tomorrow. Reflect on what you have done and what you can do better. Martin Luther King was no martyr, but he knew that he had a lot of work to do, and there was a lot of work to be done. He knew that there was a strong probability that he was not going to make it to the promised land. He also knew that he was not long for this world. He understood that the hate in this world was just too strong. But he had hoped. He had hoped that the work that he had done and put in would leave a roadmap of togetherness and freedom. He often so eloquently spoke about the mountaintop, but he knew we weren't ready. And that climb would be met with so much and many unbearable obstacles. I want to personally applaud every beautiful shade in this room today. The diversity in this room is immaculate. And your determination to be a part of such an occasion, I do not think we could have anticipated that there would be standing room only, but this is absolutely amazing. Martin Luther King could have never imagined this very moment and this very second in time. So no, ladies and gentlemen, kids in the audience, this is not merely a day of service. And this isn't a day, to be clear, that you are supporting Black people. This is not even a day about the civil rights movement. But this day, Monday, January 16th, 2023, is nothing other than a call to action. Can you answer that call? It's a challenge to see what can you do to make your communities, your cities, your counties, your state, and this country better. Make no mistake, we have made bountiful strides and have moved mountains. We've burned bras, we've kicked down and shattered glass ceilings, and ladies with stilettos on, let's get them right. We've rallied and we've protested, and we've attempted to hold those accountable that would look to take away the civil liberties of every individual in this room today. So no, this cannot merely be a day of service. This is a call to action. To honor Martin Luther King, such an honorable, selfless man with integrity. He believed in the love of support of every human being. Educate yourself on different cultures and ethnicities in this world. The only way to a better understanding is to have a better understanding. Educate your children. Tell them the stories of the actual first settlers, the Native Americans and the indigenous people who foraged and farmed their own lands, who created many mighty tribes and today are almost extinct. Make sure that they understand that the first people that marched and sat at the food counters that they were being spit on was those of Jewish descent. Make sure that they understand that between 1941 and 1945, the Nazi regime murdered over 6 million Jews, which therein lies the Holocaust. Our history is not to be mourned, but yet resound the triumphs over the tragedy. They have to know these things as not to repeat them, some of the world's most gruesome horrors, and be honest with them. Let them know that we are still trying to figure it out and find a way in this world of mass imperfection, and where people no longer use their words, but resort to short-term resolution for long-term problems that they cannot bat. Let them know. In 2022, there were over 611 mass shootings in the United States. And in 2022, over 187 Asians were attacked in the United States for nothing more than just being Asian. They have to know and understand in order to acknowledge and to accept other people. They have to know the truth so that they do not become urban legend. So little acceptance still in this world because some still have not yet answered the call to action. Whether you agree or disagree with Martin Luther King's nonviolent stance, he knew that nonviolence was the end game, but it would yield greater results, and that violence, although possibly justified, would have a detrimental outcome to people who already had the boot on their neck. On November 4th, 1956, Martin Luther King delivered a sermon to his congregation, and I quote, "I am afraid that many among you are more concerned about making a living than making a life. You are prone to judge the success of your profession by the index of your salary and the size of your wheelbase of your automobile, rather than the quality of your service to humanity. As you take this day to reflect on all that you have done, map out what you can do more. How can you incorporate true service to humanity in your children and family into the assignment ahead? Do not miss this opportunity today, ladies and gentlemen, to teach your children not only acceptance, but also teach them that difference is not only good, different is necessary. Teach them to embrace new and exciting things, to fight for a world that is worthy of them fighting for and all that they can truly be. Challenge them to be change makers, to bridge the gaps that we did not in the areas that maybe we were just too fearful to do. Tell them that this is their world, and although each century has passed down unfinished business, and it may be a burden, and it may at times be tough, and you undoubtedly will be heartbroken and disappointed, and disappointment may attempt to be your best friend, but in the words of Martin Luther King on February 25th, 1967, at his anti-war conference, the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in the moment of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at the time of challenge and controversy. Enjoy the rest of the program. Thank you.